for Schindler. Has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Oh, well, there's Flo on my left and there's Mary on my right, and Killer is the podcaster, well, that I'll be with tonight. And when she asks which one I love the best, I tear open my shirt and I show Huddersfield Town on my chest, because it's the Wanderers, yes, the Wanderers. A visit from Bolton is on the horizon this weekend. And Killer, my good man, what do you know about Bolton?
Not very much, Matt, but I really enjoyed that little intro. I feel quite honoured to be a part of that song, so thank you very much for that.
No worries. It felt very apt, didn't it, if we signed Dion Charles from Bolton, so throwing a Dion song at the start. But anyway, what do we know about Bolton? Bolton were formed even before Cosy was born. So back in 1874, they formed and became a founding member of the Football League in 1888. The club spent the first 40 years of their existence largely in the top flight, with just 5 seasons in the second tier. Whilst Huddersfield Town were classed as the best league side of the 1920s, Bolton can lay claim to certainly be the best cup side. As the Charleston dance took over the Western world, Huddersfield and Bolton took over English football. Town winning the league 3 times, Bolton winning the FA Cup 3 times. In fact, the teams met in the third round proper in 1923, with Bolton winning via replay to knock the reigning FA Cup winners out. Then in 1929, in the FA Cup semi-final, Bolton won 3-1 against Huddersfield before beating Portsmouth in the final. The nearest Bolton would get to toppling the Terriers in the league, though, was in 1925 when they finished third, as Town won the second of their league titles. Similar to Town, Bolton have dropped into the bottom division twice, this for Bolton in 1988 and 2021. Whilst Town took a little longer to get out of the bottom tier for the first time around, they would then emulate Bolton the second time by only having 1 season in the basement. Bolton's 4th FA Cup win came in 1958, another decade where Town weren't too bad either, as we finished 3rd in the top flight in 1954 as Bolton came 5th. Town would slip away to the second tier, though, at this point, and so would Bolton, as they spent from 1965 till 1979 in the second tier. Where the clubs differ, though, Killer, is mostly in the 2000s. Town spent most of this decade scratching around the bottom 2 tiers, as Bolton had another golden era, showing off players like Djokayev, Nolan, Campo, and JJ Okocha, whereas Town would have to settle for Ronnie Wallwork and Fola Onibuje. The clubs have met, Killer, on 105 occasions. The first match was in 1910 as Bolton defeated Huddersfield 3-1. Town only beat Bolton once in the first 11 meetings, and even during the halcyon days of Town's title triumphs, Bolton defeated Town 4 times, including a 6-1 win in April 1926, just weeks before Town lifted the title. Overall, Town have beaten Bolton 38 times. Bolton have won 47 with 20 draws, so Bolton certainly have the upper hand in the head-to-head. There's only 19 players that have played for both clubs, according to FB Ref. Players that stand out from that group are Elias Kachunga, Danny Ward, Simon Charlton, and of course, Dion Charles. Memorable games, Killer. I've got one, a memorable home game against Bolton. Any stand out for you?
Well, I was away for quite a lot of the Bolton games in recent memory, but being a kid and watching Town win just before that few years where Bolton were unbelievable and they got to see some such wonderful players, and we had Phil Jevons and the likes. The season where we had Marcus Stewart and we were going for the playoffs, if you remember, the season was fantastic. It got to January. Obviously, things went not too great for us, and everyone got a little bit upset. And then a few weeks later on, Bolton were doing really well all of a sudden, and we were still trying to fight to stay in the playoffs, and we played them at home, and it was a bit of a Michael Ricketts show, I think, and we ended up losing. We got absolutely pumped at home, and Bolton went on and finished in the playoffs. And obviously, they didn't go up that season, but we just missed out. And then the year following, they developed and pushed on again, and we played them again in the same year. Obviously, the different season, but they put 3 goals past us again second time round. And that, for me, was kind of the rot that we knew Town weren't going to be looking up towards the Premier League, and that, unfortunately, the Rubery the days of Rubery going really well and everything looking so positive was over. So it's not a really nice one to start on for us here today, is it, Matt? But that's the memory. That's the longer term memory I have of Bolton coming to Huddersfield.
One sticks out for me, and I might have used this before, but there was a game in March 1999. Jacko was the manager, and Craig Armstrong, it might have even been his debut, Craig Armstrong. We signed him from Nottingham Forest for about 750 grand. And he played centre-back in that game, but he also ended up playing midfield. He missed a penalty at Bolton, away at Bolton once as well, and left-back under Steve Bruce at times before Jamie Vincent took the shirt. But we played them in March 1999, and Town scored through Marcus Stewart, Grant Johnson, and Craig Armstrong scored from the edge of the box. It was a right goal right into the far corner. And that was just at the start of the second half, and Bolton absolutely annihilated in the second half. But Nico Vasson, I think, must have made about 7 or 8 one-on-one saves. They had a winger. They had Ida Johnson up front, but they had a winger called Michael Johansson as well, did Bolton, who was electric. And they had like they had a little thing, didn't they, with the Scandinavians at one point? They had Gudny Bergson, didn't they? They had Michael Johansson, Per Fransson, Ida Johnson, and Jussi Jaskalainen in goal as well. They were full on Scandinavian, weren't they, at that point? But yeah, and Nico Vasson was unbelievable that game. It's probably still one of the best individual goalkeeping displays I've seen. He was just unbelievable that day, and it's probably games like that which have cemented Nico Vasson into sort of town folklore, if you like, as one of those where you always mention the best goalkeepers. You know, when people do the list, don't they? Nico always gets a shout, and it's for games like that. And away at Bradford in '99, in the same year as well, he was really good with shithousing Dean Windass, saving his pen and clocking him with an elbow. Good stuff. So Nico, always nice to look back on things like that. So that was a good win for Town back then. And Town obviously didn't really go on to do much that year. I think we were in the playoffs for a large part of it and sort of fell away. But really, that was towards the Rubery era as well, wasn't it? I think he'd just come in at that point at Barry Rubery, and we had the fireworks against Wrexham, didn't we, as well? And which were fun at the time. More like patio heaters when you look back now, aren't they? But they and we spent I think $500,000 on Jamie Vincent, 750 grand on Craig Armstrong. So we did start spending some money at that point, and Craig Armstrong came in and scored the winner in that game, and Town didn't really kick on. Speaking of that, recent form killer, Ian Evatt has left the club, which I don't think I saw coming, if I'm honest. I genuinely thought it would take a bit more for them to remove him, if you like, because they're so sort of entrenched, aren't they, with Ian Evatt, or seem to be sort of really entrenched, didn't they? And people are sort of, as soon as a manager leaves, everyone goes, "Oh no, they've just sacked the manager. That means they're going to win at the weekend." And then there's loads of articles out there debunking that, aren't they? That, no, new manager bounce is not a thing. However, I did notice when it comes to new managers against Huddersfield Town, someone on Down at the Mac did this work, so thank you to them for doing this, so I didn't have to. Basically, over the last 10 seasons, when we've changed manager, the next game we averaged 0.67 points for the next game, which shows that doesn't work for Huddersfield Town. However, when the opposition do it and play us, they average 2.5 points per game. So I've long referred to Huddersfield Town as charity FC. When teams are in trouble or struggling, the ones that you want are Huddersfield Town to come along. But I will say that Huddersfield Town are a completely different animal this season, mentally very, very different. So we will see. But tell us about their recent form killer and what led to Ian Evatt losing his job.
To be fair, the season for Bolton didn't start great. And when we played them last time, I think they were down in 16th and 17th. And obviously, we put probably the best performance in of the season for us. And at that point, going through the Bolton message boards prior to the drive-in we did for that game, the fans were already talking about an IanEvattable sacking. And they thought that his time was up at that point. And since then, after we beat them so comfortably, they won 3 games in a row, which just took that relief off him. But then after winning 3 games, Bolton have kind of been between 8th and 12th throughout the season from then until now. what that meant is they've not kind of won enough games to release all the pressure. They've lost just enough to keep that pressure kind of there. Remember, Ian Everett's been at Bolton, or was at Bolton, for 4 years and I think 20 odd days or something, which made him the 5th longest serving manager in the Football League. And I think what happens is with a coach that's been there for so long, yeah, you like it. But Bolton are a big club, remember. They feel like they should be above this division. This isn't like somebody coming from the Isman League and then coming through to League One and they're sticking with them through thick and thin because of how well they've done. Ian Everett took Bolton from a very dark place where they've probably, like you say, Matt, going through their history, they've not only been there once before. And he's got them back to being a relevant club. They've won trophies with the EFL trophy. We can laugh at it, but they've actually been there and been to Wembley twice. They've got to League One and they've missed out on in the playoffs. Okay, but he's shown progression year on year. But this year it just seems too much for him. The fans talk about the players not looking interested and the all sorts of character issues. Maybe that's half a reason why Dean Charles has ended up with. It's not his own issues, but the players falling out themselves and people not wanting to be there anymore in that kind of environment. So it feels like for most Bolton fans, it was the right time for Ian Everett to go. They've only won 2 out of the last 9 games, but they're still in with a shout of us. They're only, I think, 8-9 points behind us. But in the form table, they're 16th. You can look at the team and they've scored just as many goals as we have, and they've got 3 goal scorers that have got far more than our strikers. They've got Aaron Collins. They've got, obviously they had Dion Charles, and I can't remember the third striker, but they've all got nearly double figures, whereas we don't. But the defensively, they've not been great. They've shipped goals for fun, and they're questioning the character of the defence and the desire to play for Ian Everett, and that's why they believe they're conceding goals. But the form's been all over the place. It felt like for most fans, it was the right time for Ian Everett to go. Even if it was from the outside, don't really see it. But it reminds me, Matt, of a bit like when Lee Clark was with us, where on paper it looked fantastic, but us watching it just knew it wasn't quite clicking. Bolton fans got to that point with Ian Everett, but the form has been all over the shop. Unfortunately, Matt, for us already going into this podcast, the Bolton we faced on Saturday is a Bolton that no one's seen for 4 and a bit years. So we don't exactly know how relevant that form is going into the game.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because this is where you find out whether it is the manager that's holding them back, or whether it's the players, or whether it's just the cohesion, isn't it? So I think one thing that he's been doing and that has changed is that he did play like a 3-5-2 system, and he had Dion Charles very much in front and centre with Collins, I think, towards the end of last season. Although Dion Charles spent a little bit injured, didn't he, towards the end of last season? He's changed shape a little bit this year, and he's gone more 3-4-3. And you can see they've signed Randall, haven't they? Joe Randall from Peterborough, which is he was a good player. He scored, didn't he, the other night as well? And they've also gone John McAtee as well. So it looks like Ian Everett wanted more fluidity in the build-up, wanted more people to sort of do bits higher up the pitch and be involved with the play, whereas Dion Charles was more of your closer, if you like, for them. He was the one who would put the chances in the net or over the bar. If you've seen him against Portsmouth, the highlight against Portsmouth last season where he misses from like 5 yards is not great, and he sort of doesn't fit into that 3-4-3, and maybe Everett's gone a little bit too far that way, because I think League One you need a little bit of fire and ice, don't you? In some ways, I'm going Game of Thrones here, right? I'm going to start quoting dragons
Matt,
and all sorts.
You're right, you do. And what happened after the playoff elimination last year with Ian Everett? He came out and publicly questioned the players' ability to play under pressure. He threw them all under the bus afterwards. He said, "There's only so much we can do. They've got to go out there and deliver, and they haven't. Maybe it's a problem with the players." And since that moment, things have changed quite a lot for Bolton.
Yeah, a lot of Bolton fans point to January last year, so that they think it's been going a little bit longer, where I think they were in the shout for the top 2, weren't they? And I think there was that game against Portsmouth where they perhaps could have won that one, and they've ended up dropping off and finishing the playoffs. And let's be honest, when we saw Bolton versus Oxford, we all expected Bolton to walk that, didn't we? I think Oxford were a late entrant into the playoffs. They weren't a great side on paper. They had a local coach pretty much running the show, and they won, didn't they? They won the match, and Bolton, Oxford are up there now. They've got rid of Des Buckingham of Oxford, and they're now in the Championship with Mikhail Helik and Gary Rowett at this head of the ship, looking like they're going to be the next Preston, aren't they? Just sat that sort of club that sits in mid-table and doesn't really want to move. Wonder what that would be like, just sitting in mid-table one season. I wonder what that would be like.
Not a clue.
Interesting. So Bolton have definitely had. They haven't exactly had it rough, have they? But that, because they're in with a shout. But I think it's understandable, and I think people are making their Lee Clark comparison, aren't they, as well? Where I think you just did, didn't you, shortly a few minutes ago as well? And where outside looking in, you kind of think they're only 3 points outside the top six. That can change. What's up with them? But when you sort of break it down, and Lee Clark changed a number of times, didn't he? We started off with that free flowing football, and we needed a little bit of steel to add to the flair, didn't we? And we went too far the other way, didn't we? And ended up just playing hoofball towards the end. Lee Clark, I remember that Sheffield United game where it was pretty much the ball would go to Jack Hunt and he would just hit diagonals, and we spent 90 minutes hitting diagonal balls to Jordan Rhodes and Alan Lee, and it was just awful. And we lost 2-0. And I kind of see it as well with Bolton, where they've made those tweaks and it's not working and they've regressed. And it's difficult, isn't it, when you've got the expectation Bolton have. And to be honest, Bolton have got a far better recent history than us, in the 2000s and what have you. But I kind of look at them, they've got the same stadium as us. They're kind of like a Lancashire version of Huddersfield in many ways. But I think their fan ambitions are a little bit loftier than ours, if you like. I think their expectation and entitlement is higher than Huddersfield Town, basically because they were in the Premier League for quite a while and a big deal in the Premier League in the 2000s, with JJ Kocher and Yuri Joke. They had Mario Jardel and stuff like that at one point. They brought in some good players, didn't they? And they were good to watch, Kevin Davies and Big Sam, and they had a lot of character in there.
Didn't they have even Campo? They had even Campo. Didn't they bring Campo in from Real Madrid as well for a bit?
Yeah, they had even Campo. They had Fernando Hierro as well, didn't they?
We'd be the same, Mark. Come on, if we're sat here talking about 20 years ago, we had Idaho Johnson in his prime. We can only dream. I mean, we did get Aaron Moy, so we can't go too hard on missing out on players. But JJ Kocher, come on.
It would have been fun, wouldn't it? It'd have been fun. But yeah, so that's where they're at. And to be honest, I'm not going to criticize them for removing Everett. I get it. They've got a good director of football there, haven't they? So I'm sure they'll come out with that one and appoint the right man. I think Schumacher looks a good fit for them to me. When I see the names available, Steven Schumacher just sticks out like a sore thumb. I've seen David Wagner's been linked, but I don't think that would be I don't think that'd be good for David Wagner, to be honest. But I think he'd get them up eventually. But I think Schumacher's the natural fit there to do that. But anyway,
yeah, I think so. I think Schumacher's the man. But I tell you what, Matt, don't you still get a little bit upset when you see David Wagner linked with other jobs in England?
It's like an ex-girlfriend, isn't it? You see him linked. I saw him linked with Plymouth, and I'm like, no, he's too good for them. And it's like, he's up on this pedestal, isn't he, with Huddersfield fans? And you're just like, no, they don't. I'm like, yeah, he can go to Borussia Dortmund, that's fine, but he's not going to fucking Plymouth or Bolton or whatever. It's like he's not going to clubs like us. He's ours. But obviously we like Michael Duff, but. Yeah, I don't like seeing him being linked with. I'm still upset with Norwich fans over how they treated him. They were disgraceful towards David Wagner. I thought he dragged a mid-table team into the top six, and they shouldn't have been in the top six. And when they got in the top six, they got battered in the playoffs. But that's because they weren't a playoff side, and they just hung him out to dry for that. And what's happened since then? Pretty much the same team. Oh, you're in 13th, 14th place, Norwich. Oh, maybe David Wagner wasn't so bad after all. But there we go. Anyway, that's me off my soapbox. It gets me angry, Killer. It gets me angry the way they spoke about him. You don't.
We love to see it, Matt. That's what we're all here for, mate.
No. Right. Okay. So moving on. Let's calm me down a little bit with Norwich fans and David Wagner. But let's move on, Killer. You know what's next, don't you? The tactics board. It took a little bit longer to get going than what it should have done. Right, tactics board, Killer. Okay, so Julian Darby's going to take control of Bolton this weekend, and we don't really know what we're going to get, do we? It's a bit like Forrest Gump, isn't it? We don't really know what we're going to get. So I need Jerry to do that voice, don't we? Jerry's from Greenbow, Alabama. So Bolton have been playing with the back three. They like to play out from the back, which is good for us. We like teams who play out from the back because we can press high. And Michael Duff gets to employ that midfield, which never works apart from against teams that play out from the back.
Yeah.
So I imagine that the Bolton team will be, like I say, the press conference was today, doesn't it? And it's difficult to it's difficult to know what we're going to get. But Luke Southwood's been playing in goal. People might remember him from the 4-3 game against Reading when we went into the playoff season in 21-22. He's doing quite well at Bolton. Plays out from the back. They have had Santos, but I think he's injured. He's the big, unmistakable 6'5" centre back at Bolton. He went off against Cambridge in a previous home game, and he's not been seen. So I'm not sure. We haven't had the team news for Bolton yet, but I'm not sure if he's injured at the minute. But he hasn't played in the last 1 or 2 games. So George Johnston plays as a left-sided centre back. He's quite talented. He spent a little bit of time abroad. A player that they were very excited about when they brought him in, and he's decent. They have recently Gethin Jones has been playing as the right centre back, but he's more of a right back, if you like. So it's a strange defence that Everton deployed, and you can see he's used a right back at centre back, and the other centre back as well. That's been playing in lieu of Mr. Santos. So against Bolton the other night, they had Forrester and Cogley has played. Josh Dacres Cogley, and he again's a right back, right wing back. So that's really interesting in that. That's really interesting in that Dacres Cogley's been playing there. So they are sort of all over the place, killer at the back at the minute at Bolton, and that's something that maybe Huddersfield can take advantage of, or it's perhaps maybe something that Julian Derby will actually look to shore up. So we expect them to play a back three, whereas who's in that back three, we're a little bit unsure. So I would imagine Johnston will play on the left. Cogley maybe will carry on, and Forrester will play centre back. They've got the 2 wing backs there, Ose Tutu, who's a decent player, Jordi Ose Tutu, who's quite rapid up and down, the former Arsenal man. And then on the other side, they have Schön, who is the Hungarian who's been signed quite recently as well. He's quite a decent player. And then in midfield, they're very much a team who like to get on the ball and knock it around. So Aaron Morley's just come back from his loan at Wickham. And then Josh Sheehan is someone who really likes to get on the ball and dictate. And then Thomason's in there. But I think what we see from that midfield is that it's very much a ball playing midfield rather than any steal in there killer. So what we're sort of looking at, Sheehan, Morley, Thomason, that is very much an Everton midfield. And these are where the changes might appear, because someone like Julian Derby will maybe look at that and think, okay, maybe we need someone a bit more physical in there to sort of match up. Or maybe they'll go like for like, because Town possibly might go with Hodge and Kane again. So they might look at that and think, okay, well, I fancy Sheehan and Morley against that. So that'll be quite interesting. Then, but they do tend to play that 3-4-3 as well, where they'll have Collins as your front point, and then they'll have McAtee just behind, along with Randall. So there's a lot to sort of think about, and that's where they could really get to Town because Town don't have David Kasuma, and unfortunately Michael Duff's still saying a couple of weeks away for Kasuma, which is a bit of a blow, if I'm honest, because against Bolton, who drop into that space in front of your back three or back four, not having David Kasuma doing the destroying job there is a little bit disappointing, isn't it, mate? That's where you kind of think, how are Town going to sort of combat that? So we'll go to Town's team, and Town, the team's starting to now look a little bit better, isn't it, in some respects? I mean, Nigel Lundvik, so in goal, I think there's a choice to be made now in goal, killer. I think Jacob Chapman struggled maybe under the bench pressure from Lee Nichols. He didn't have a good time out against Blackpool. And it's at this point now where you look at it and think, well, if Nichols is fit, do you put him in? And there's a question mark there to sort of, or there's a question to be answered. So Nichols, I would always go Nichols. I just think he's a better goalkeeper. He keeps the ball out of the net far better than what Jacob Chapman does. But Jacob Chapman brings the ball playing, doesn't he? And he's got the momentum, and who knows where Lee Nichols' head is at the minute as well, because there's rumours he wants to leave, whereas Jacob Chapman very much wants to play for Huddersfield Town. So it's going to be interesting in there, mate.
Yeah.
But I think Chapman will probably get the nod still against Bolton.
You reckon? I'd be surprised personally. And now I've been a
I think
massive
so.
advocate for Chappers. I think he's come in and not just done a job. I think sometimes you get backup keepers that come in, they're okay, they don't make any mega mistakes, and you just say, yeah, fine, no worries. Move. Then when the number one's back, you put him straight back in. I think Chapman's been better than that. I think, like you say, Matt, his distribution is better than Nichols. I think he's as good as anybody we've had at the club for years, to be honest, bar Lossell
Yeah.
probably. Um, and when you bring a young lad in, I know he's 24, so he's not particularly young, but when you're looking at experience and games played, he's young and he's a keeper, which normally a mature a little bit older, a little bit later. You say, go and earn the spot, go and earn that shirt, mate. And I think he did enough to earn it. But like you say, the first time Nichols is on the bench, he wasn't great last time out. And I feel like that changes the dynamics of what a keeper is required to do to retain the shirt. And for me, even though I love Chapman, and I think if Nichols was to leave in January, then it's a different thing. I'd put Chapman straight back in and have absolutely zero worry about it. But as Lee Nichols is here, and due to the form in a very short space of time, just one game from Chapman with Nichols being back, I don't think you can play Lee Nichols. I think you have to put him back in, and I'll actually be quite surprised if Duff doesn't, because we're at a point of the season now, Matt. We've got some tough games coming up, and I think that does come into it. It's all right saying just take each game at a time, one by one, look at it. No, we've got Birmingham on Tuesday night as well, which is going to be a tough game. We need to win on Saturday because Tuesday is going to be actually tougher than Saturday is. And for that, you put out your first 11, the best 11. And for me, as of today, and I've U-turned a lot this season, Matt, I'll be getting known for this quickly if I continue the way I'm going. But Lee Nichols has to come in for me. Not that Chapman isn't good enough. It's just that I think Lee Nichols gives everyone a little bit more confidence. Even if it's just the fans, and that makes a difference in these games. We know as town fans, we've dragged ourselves through the Championship into the Premier League once before. The fans are such a big influence when it comes to these tight games. And I think as a fan base, we respond better as well when Lee Nichols is in there. And I don't think that can be underestimated. To me, everything is kind of setting itself up for Duff to put Lee Nichols back in on Saturday.
Okay. I think Chapman might still get the nod, if I'm honest. I think Duff. I'm not saying he's slow to change things, but I think when he trusts someone, I think he lets them have a bad game and continue. So I think there's maybe the trust there, and I'm not sure how fit Nichols is at the minute. But if Nichols is fit and his head's in the right place, it's a no-brainer really for me. The back three is interesting. Sorensen, or will it be a back three? They tried this hybrid. It was a really strange hybrid system, wasn't it, against Blackpool, which is becoming more hybrid by the week, where Town are trying to play 3-5-2, they're trying to play 4-4-2, and they're trying to play 4-3-3 all at the same time. And what you're kind of getting is you're getting Josh Koroma playing left wing back but pushing up as part of the three. You're having two main strikers, and Dion Charles kind of hangs a little bit wider right, but not quite right hand side. So you have this lopsided three. The left centre back comes round to a fullback position, which means the two centre backs then come round. But Ollie Turton drops. Ollie Turton can't play wing back. I'm sorry, he can't. He's a right back. If he plays wing back, he's not attacking enough for a lot of the role. But he is good enough on the back foot defensively, and so it ends up being a 4 anyway on the ball. And then in midfield, Hodge is kind of dropping in, and what Ben Wiles his form is tapered off a little bit because he's having to play this kind of not right hand side role here, where it's kind of almost like a nothing sort of role, where out of possession he's having to come back to the right to try and help Ollie Turton at times, which he didn't against Blackpool, and Ollie Turton got absolutely rinsed in that first half. But he's kind of coming back to this right hand side, but then having to move back to sort of behind the front two in possession at times to try and create what he's been doing earlier in the season. So this is having a bit of a negative effect, I think, on Ben Wiles at the minute, where he's not quite as effective because there's too much travelling between the two. And it also has a little effect on Brodie Spencer here playing that left back, left centre back role. And as we saw with the first goal again, for Blackpool, whereby Spencer's caught, Karoma's trying to do something on the left hand side. Spencer's trying to support him, and then the ball gets broken down in midfield, and then all of a sudden Brodie's out of position here. And then the whole defence has to try and slide over to cover. And then there's that gap there, which Brodie really wants to be in tighter, but he can't because he's caught between playing left centre back and left back. And I think at some point Duff's going to have to. We've drawn a lot of games recently, rather than looking sort of comfortable and winning. And for me, I think he's going to have to simplify this system again to get the best out of players. And I think that might happen when Ruskin comes back in. You've got a natural left wing back then, and then you've got the choice to whether you play Karoma or not. But the problem is playing Karoma as a left wing not back at the minute, you're exposing gaps in this side of defence with Brodie Spencer coming across. And Tom Lees, Matty Pearson are not quick. Radinho Balka's quick, but he's not quite there, is he? So as it stands, you've got the two slower centre-backs, we'll say. Probably beat me and you in a race, no problems. And then Ollie Turton, who's not exactly quick either. So the system's kind of a little bit sketchy at the minute. And then Joe Hodge is not a Kasumu, so he's not sprinting back into these gaps to plug them like Kasumu was before he got injured. And then Herbie Kane hopefully isn't asked to go as an attacking 8 again, and he can sit and help dictate, and then Ben Wiles can do what he does. So Town have really sort of got to beat Bolton. They have to look in. They have to look in front of the back three here, and that's where Hodge will sit. But can Hodge deal with the likes of Randall and McAtee if McAtee plays? He didn't play in the last game. That's a question there. You would put Kasumu or Hogg there potentially, and Jonathan Hogg, who was excellent against Blackpool, maybe he just sits to sort of keep an eye on Randall like he did against Peterborough at the start of this season away at Peterborough. Or maybe they look at Anthony Evans and think, okay, Anthony Evans is quite physical. Maybe he can do that role where they sit. But Anthony Evans naturally is quite attacking. I don't think he's going to look over his shoulder going backwards, if you like. So Town have got an issue really in front of the defence for this game that they need to solve. And I think it might be best being solved by Jonathan Hogg, killer, in this game. I know Jonathan Hogg doesn't have the recovery pace anymore, but he can read defensive situations and he can do those tactical fouls, and he can make it awkward for someone like Randall or McAtee. And then Herbie Kane is probably at risk here because you've got McAtee and Randall in those areas, and you've got Morley and Sheehan perhaps finding them. So what you have then is you probably have Dion Charles dropping a little bit to put a press on to the defensive midfielders, as well as Ben Wiles coming across, which then exposes Town's right-hand side a little bit. So it's going to be interesting where Town are really going to have to be careful in front of the back three and down their right-hand side. I think that's where Town can be got at in this game, and they worry me slightly. And it's mostly because Karoma's playing left wing back, if I'm honest, and that kind of alters the shape. And I know going forward, Karoma adds a lot, doesn't he? He can come in and shoot, and he can provide width. But I think it negatively affects the balance of everyone else. And I think without Kasumu plugging those gaps, it becomes difficult. But Karoma's probably going to have to play, because I think is this Ruskin's last suspension game, possibly?
It will be, yeah. He got 3, didn't he? So this will be the last one.
So I think for Town, before I waffle on too much, mate, I think they'll go with the back three. I think Turton will play. I think it'll be that sliding system again, where it's kind of a 4-3 at certain points. Spencer will do what he does and try and support and try and work back. And he was excellent against Blackpool in the second half, to be fair, was Brodie. And I quite like him on the left because he looks good there for Northern Ireland as well. And he looked good for Motherwell when he was on loan last season. Karoma will push forward to try and make that a front three. The issue is there, you've got no width whatsoever coming up the other side, which makes it a little bit imbalanced. So Ben Wiles is probably going to loiter around that area or within that area to try and create something from there. So Town are probably going to go with something like that and try and play mostly down the left-hand side, which is what we've been doing. And that leaves the left wing-back Shern perhaps pushing up high to go one-on-one with Turton to push him back. So I think that's where the game will be won and lost, is down Town's right-hand side if they can defend properly. And Lasse Sorensen should hopefully be involved at some point, and he could potentially add another layer. So, I mean, the other option really is that Town go with a back three and play Brodie as an out-and-out left wing-back, and Josh Karoma sits down.
That's my outside shout. So I'm entirely with you so far on how I expect Town to play. for me, listening to Duff today, he suggested Lass is ready to play some part in the game again, right?
Not start,
But
but yeah,
Duff,
play.
but then you say that, Mark. But Mike Duff has form for chucking people in to start off with. He has.
Yeah, it does.
I think. But he spoke about Bolton in that now they've got a new manager. He's never managed before, so they can't see what he's kind of. I think he's coached their under 16s and then their under 18s at Bolton. So there's nothing there where you can look at, right, they play this way, so he's going to get the first team playing that way. All the Bolton fans are referring to this game as a free shot, so there's no expectations that they're going to come and get anything. To me, that tells me that Bolton are going to come and have a go. They ain't going to come and sit back and defend deep. So then, my Michael Duff, I'm thinking, right, Bolton are going to come and have a go because they've got nothing to lose. How do we counter their no fear of attacking? Because if they lose, it don't actually matter. A bit like when we had Johnny Worthington and went down to Southampton, Matt, and we just went at him. We scored a few goals early doors, got absolutely pumped in the second half because he didn't adjust it, but we didn't have to. We gambled, it worked a little bit, and then we got punished at the end. I think Bolton are going to try and do to us what we did to Southampton. To counter that, I'm expecting Duff to play Wiles and Evans. I think he's going to revert back to that two high attacking midfielders. I think he's 100% going to do that. So then for me, you're building around there. You're going to have, obviously, the front two pick themselves. In midfield, I'm thinking Wiles, because Duff picks him more than I pick him. Evans as well. That third centre midfielder, like you say, Matt, for me, I'd go with Johnny Ogg. I think this is the game you target over the next two games. The Birmingham game isn't anything you expect too much out of. I'd be focusing on Saturday. Johnny Ogg can't play 2 games in a row this time in his career, we don't think. I'd be looking at Johnny Ogg in midfield with both Wiles and Evans. That's how I'd be going and letting Herbie Kane sit, especially after being taken off at half-time against Blackpool, having not performed to Duff's expectations. And for me, Hodge at the moment, Matt, is showing himself to be that inexperienced guy that is out on loan. He's got all the raw talent and ability, I think, to make it as a decent pro. But in certain game situations, he's not got that maturity yet and that experience to be able to handle the occasion and to adapt to what's going on around him. He's very much one-dimensional just yet. But that's what we expect as a young guy on loan. Nothing against him. He'll get there in time. But for these
You want
games,
him with Hogg or Kasumu rather than instead of, don't you? Ideally,
exactly, absolutely. I think he needs somebody else with him. And when he's the only guy sitting in behind Evans and Wiles, I don't think it's the right shout for him either. But I wouldn't be surprised if Sorensen plays, Matt. I'd be looking at Sorensen on the right, Spencer on the left-hand side, and working out your centre-backs from there. Josh Koroma, again, I'm as big a fan of him as I am as Ben Wiles, but I just don't see how he fits into this system. And the more the season's going on, yes, when Josh Koroma has a one-on-one, and when he stands his man up, he beats him every time, outside, inside, it's absolutely fine. But what's happening now is other teams are seeing that defensively, he's the weak point because he doesn't get back correctly. And they're taking advantage of that. And once that happens, you've got to shift again. And I'm expecting Michael Duff to shift that this weekend, potentially. This is just obviously an outside shout if Duff does want to change it. But today, based on his press conference, he doesn't know what Bolton are going to do. And he did say that Hogg and Evans playing so well has changed his perspective on the midfield. Because for so long in this season, we only had 3 players that could play there with Wiles, Kasumu, and Kane, and they did really, really well. But now it's not like that anymore. I really do think, Matt, we could see quite a different system, especially after the Blackpool first half was so awful. We can't do that again. And it's up to Michael Duff to find a way of doing it. And Bolton are going to come at us. They're going to come at us. And we have to be defensively resolute against a team that scores as many goals as we do.
I mean, the other option is to go with a flat 4, isn't it? And go back to the 4-3-3 in and out of possession, because it's the changing system in and out of possession, which is kind of causing little bits for us at the minute and little holes, if you like. And again, it's what would you do with the 2 strikers? Because you've got 2 central strikers in that. Does one of them drop out? Do you drop Joe Taylor? Do you drop Dion Charles against his old club? And do you bring Callum Marshall in, who can play more wide right and do the tracking back there and things? Because you don't really want Dion Charles wide right, do you? I know he works hard. He's a pest. He can do a lot of the pressing, but that's not quite his natural game. But maybe Town will do that. Maybe they'll push to that 4, like the 4-3-3. But the question then would be who plays that other wide right role. But where Town can hurt Bolton is they need to get the ball to Wiles, Evans, or whoever in the final third and look to pick holes, because the back 3 for Bolton has been a little bit not quite. They're not natural centre backs. Some of them, who've been playing, so they'll leave mistakes. They won't make the runs. They won't cover off gaps that you would expect. And there could be goals in this one, mate. It could be one of those 2-2 kind of games. I think I'm leaning towards 2-2 in this because Town are just a little bit not ragged, but they're just not quite as fluent in and out of transition at the minute. Um, like I said, they are leaving gaps. Kasumu's a huge miss for me. It's so big in when the ball gets turned over and we lose the ball. Kasumu's so huge in dropping in and putting that energy in to sort of cover the gaps that others leave, and we're missing that. And Hoggy has it in his head, just he just doesn't have the speed of Kasumu to make it back. And maybe Hoggy sitting deep in front of the back four could be the way to go in this one, and maybe we'll go with that 4-3-3. And if they do try and play out from the back, then Evans and Wiles and Karoma, Taylor, Charles is a real sort of pressing machine, pressing unit, isn't it? And that could cause a lot of problems. But it wouldn't surprise me, if they mixed it up, Bolton. The thing is, because they've had Everett for 4 years, everyone is tuned in to Ian Everett football, isn't it? It's not like someone's been there 6 months, you can come and change it. It's like when we lost Carlos Corberán, everyone was so in sync with what Carlos Corberán did. So when Danny Schofield tried to make those little changes to go 4-1-4-1, everyone just sort of, one player didn't do it and everything just fell in. So I think if Bolton score first, it's going to be a really difficult afternoon. And it's one of those early kickoffs where we do kind of start slowly. We have been starting a little bit sleepily. And if we score first, I think we win the game, because I think they just go, oh, well, we'll get a new manager soon and carry on doing what they've been doing. But if they score first, I think it might be difficult. I think if Ian Everett was still there, we win this game. But now, because of the changes, I'm just a little bit unsure what we're going to get. And like you said, Michael Duff was unsure what we're going to get. So I'm going to be a bottleless get, as Mick Morgan would say, and go for a 2-2, mate.
2-2. Well, Duff
Yeah.
also mentioned in his press conference that he's got no idea what Bolton are going to do, and 30 seconds in, he'll be able to see their formation and will adjust. So I actually think when it comes to what we're going to pick, we'll pick a system where we can shift it around a little bit, I think, with two formations in mind, depending on what Bolton go with. And with you, I think there'll be goals in this game. They score freely, we score okay. They let goals in a lot easier than we are, and they're not going to come and shut up shop. I just don't see that. They're trying to chase the top six down, so they're going to go for the win. He might only be here for a couple of games, the lads in charge. I think Andy Taylor's with him and Andrew Toot as well. There's three of them co-coaching. But I see a Town win, Matt. And maybe it's more through desperation than through analysis, because Tuesday night, I'm not going to be predicting a win for Birmingham at home. And we've only drawn the last game. So if we fail to win this one, you're looking at 3 games in a row there where you've failed to pick up 3 points in any single game. So I think we have to win on Saturday. And I think we will. I think it's a 2-1 win for Town. But I imagine it'll be a very open game of football. It'll be a very, very open game of football. One thing that was very interesting, what Michael Duff said in his press conference today as well, Matt, was watching the game against Blackpool. To me, I thought Charles and Taylor didn't do enough work off ball to help out defensively. And we got overrun a lot of times when they didn't track the man back properly. And Duff spoke about something like that pretty on point in his press conference, in that they've been working in meetings this week with Charles and Taylor to explain what certain words mean. So when he's on the sideline shouting X, Y, and Z, they know
Bananas.
they're tasked to follow the man, because obviously on the right-hand side, we got absolutely smashed time and time and time again. And we can say it's a shift with Karoma, and that's the problem, because people are trying to overcorrect. But to me, a lot of it came back down to the strikers not getting back in time. This week, we have worked on that, and I think that'll help us out. And this is really the first kind of week where we've had both strikers in all week. They know their assignments. They know what they needed to do, not just on the ball, but off the ball. And that'll play into our hands. And we'll be having a very, very happy Saturday afternoon once we've beaten Bolton. But we really do need to win this week. It's really important that we get 3 points on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, after drawing with Blackpool, I think we absolutely need to win one of the 2 home games and not lose either. So fingers crossed, mate, as we go for the early kickoff. As it stands at the minute, we're half time in Wrexham versus Birmingham as we're recording, and that's 1-1. And I think if it finishes that, I think we'll be relatively happy, won't we, if that's the score. Looking around the grounds, what else is going on? Cambridge versus Mansfield. Nothing fixed to it when it comes to us, really. Barnsley versus Stevenage. That's another one where you expect Barnsley to carry on their good form. Burton and Rotherham. Rotherham are turning a corner a little bit, aren't they, and starting to move a little bit higher up. So let's keep an eye on Rotherham for the second half of the season. Charlton were lucky when they beat Bolton. I'm not convinced Charlton are back and chasing the top 6. But I think they'll win that one. Exeter, Blackpool. Blackpool are slightly better away from home, aren't they? So they always look good to us, don't they, Blackpool? But they're still sort of 16th. Orient versus Reading's an interesting one because they're 2 outside playoff shouts, aren't they? At the minute, and then you've got Lincoln, Peterborough, who I think a lot of people fancied to get 5th and 6th, and they're both kind of not quite making it at the minute. Stockport maybe continue their stuff against Crawley. Wigan versus Bristol Rovers, and the important one really is Wycombe versus Northampton, because you would expect Wycombe to win that. I didn't expect them to beat Mansfield last week. I thought that might be a draw, so I was really disappointed to see Wycombe come through, because you're hoping they've lost the manager, they've lost a couple of players. Hopefully they stop winning bloody games, but they continued. And I expect they'll continue against Northampton, which makes it all the more important that Town continue to pick up 3 points as much as they can, mate. Anything stand out to you before we wrap up the show?
We just need Coney to leave Wycombe before the weekend or before the end of January, and then I think we only have to worry about Wrexham and Birmingham for the top 2. So I don't really mind what Wycombe do this weekend, as long as Luton up their offer and they can be on his way. So we can just concern ourselves knowing Wycombe will drop down, because, like you say, I didn't have them beating Mansfield. I didn't have them doing that. I kind of expected them to, especially with Bluefield going and everything going wrong for them on paper, for them to get a win was just a bit of a gutter punch, wasn't it? Like, it was a bit of a, you just didn't really want it, but unfortunately we had to live through that. And if Luton can just get the shit together, that'd be really good, especially after. Well, they're in trouble. Maybe you can do with Morgan Whittaker. And Whittaker didn't turn up for the Plymouth game. It just didn't bother. Maybe that's what can happen. Maybe that's the best thing that can happen for Town this weekend.
He's got a strange past, as Richard Coney. When you Google him, he's got a strange history to him, but an interesting one at that as well. Interesting player, good player. So hopefully that's the case. And then on the Tuesday, we won't get a chance to do a drive-in for the Tuesday, and that's when Town play Birmingham. On the same day, it's Wycombe versus Barnsley, which is very interesting. Wrexham versus Stevenage. Wrexham, you expect to continue their good home form. Stockport have got another good home game against Shrewsbury. That's another one where you look at them and expect them to win. Rotherham have got Cambridge, so Rotherham could be the big winners this weekend, continue to push. And then you've got Bolton, Northampton, Burton, Reading, Charlton, Bristol Rovers, Exeter, Leyton Orient. So there's a couple of teams there that could really sort of put themselves in the picture this week as teams at the top start to play each other, and so it's going to be interesting. So I think by the time the end of the window comes round, we'll have a really good idea of how the league's going to play out. And I still fancy Stockport to sneak into that top 6, and Barnsley, I didn't fancy them this season, but they look good. And by the time we go there, it's going to be a hell of a game, isn't it, mate? So I think that's all we got time for, isn't it, this week? Because we've rambled on way too long. And I've had a big rant about David Wagner in the middle of it as well.
I loved it though, Matt. That's what we're all here for. A bit of entertainment. Just getting you cracked, Matt. Just revealing your true inner self. Thank you for that moment. No. I'll cherish it.
It took 4 years. Right, mate. That's it. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully 3 points for Town this weekend.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.